Hello, and today what we're going to do is carry on with the Splunk theme, and we're going to install the universal forwarder. Now this is an integral part of this whole Splunk theme architecture, and you need this as part of the overall installation, so you've got the right architecture underneath to get the event logs sent from and to the right place. Now if you haven't got anything else set up already, or you haven't got the Splunk server done, then check out my other videos and get up to speed, so you can then carry on from here and then install the Splunk universal forwarder. Now this is my Ubuntu server. As you can see, I've got a GUI version and we've got Splunk already installed. If we just check the status of Splunk here, we can do sudo // status, and you can see the Splunk helpers or Splunk D is running. So that's what we want on this particular server. If you want to know how to set up the Ubuntu server on a GUI version, have Splunk installed on there, then I'll leave a link in the description as I've mentioned below. And to understand this bit, I'm just going to toggle over to another screen and then just use this to explain what we're going to do. So hopefully it'll make a bit more sense as we're going through it. Now we've got two servers. We've got one which has Splunk on it, and one which has my Active Directory domain controller on it. So between those two, that's where I want data going from and to. So if I just do my server one here, and then we'll have server two over here. And then over on this one is going to be called our Active Directory. So it's a Windows server. It's got Active Directory on there, and its IP is 172.16.01. And on this one, we're going to have our universal forwarder. So we need to get this installed on this machine. And on this particular machine, this is an Ubuntu server, and it's got Splunk installed on there. And the IP address, actually, I need to check and find out. So we can do hostname -i, and we can see it's got a 102 IP, so we can put that in here. So we've got 172, we've got 172.16.0.102. And on this one, we've got the main Splunk instance installed on here. And it's the enterprise version. And then what connects these together is we've got a network adapter through VirtualBox. So just put, and I've got an internal NIC which connects these together. When setting this up, this connects to that VirtualBox adapter, and so does that one. Now in this Windows machine, I've also got the adapter which has the internal NIC, and it's also got internet access, a secondary adapter. So that's how the Windows server Active Directory can get to the internet. So this machine also has access to the internet. It goes via the internal NIC to the AD, and then that packet passes out to the internet, and then it goes back round again to get internet access. And for anything internal to speak to any other domain joined machines, it will do it through this internal NIC. Right, that's the overall infrastructure to hopefully help you understand what's going on here. And then what happens with the Splunk theme is, let's just change the color here. We have for data, we'll have that color here. And then essentially what happens is we have domain joined workstations, so we can put those here. So that could be a Windows 10 machine, and that will send or go through the AD in order to communicate. And when it does that, this Active Directory gets all the data, so event logs, security logs, sign-in logs, all those things come into this Active Directory domain controller. Now what we want to do is collect all those or any events that we want, and they'll be sent to the universal forwarder or collected in there. And then what we want to do is from there, we want to send that through the internal NIC so we can then communicate with the Splunk server. And then what will happen is it will all end up in our Splunk interface in there. And that's where we're going to be able to index it from and do all the analysis that we need to do And if you've ever seen it online, then that's the part that you're looking at. So hopefully that makes sense, and you'll see this play out as we carry on with the installation. Right, so the first part of this that we're going to do is we're going to set up our Splunk server ready to receive data in. So if data is going to be sent from here over here, we need to have this ready to receive that data. So we're going to be looking at the IP and port numbers. Wherever your Splunk instance is installed, you need to go over to there. So mine is on the Ubuntu server, so we'll head over there and we'll log in. To get to the Splunk instance, I've got mine on a web interface. So on the default setup, if you haven't added the SSL certificate, you can just go into HTTP, use your loopback address or the IP address of the machine, which I showed you earlier, and then it'll be on port 8000 by default. So log into Splunk Enterprise. Give that a moment to load. And what we need to do here is we need to go into settings. Under the data, you'll see forward and receiving. Next, we need to go under receive data and go to configure receiving. And then what we want to do is click add new. Okay, so configure receiving. So it's saying set up this Splunk instance to receive data from forwarders. So for the forwarders, we're going to do next. It says listen on this port. So we're essentially opening a listening port so that when data comes in, it is expecting it. So another word I like to use for a listening port is a data expecting port, because in my mind that's the better way to think about it. What we can do is follow the guidance here and leave it on 79997 and click save. And as you can see, that has now been enabled. And then once we've got data, we would be able to index it. So we can get that set up now. So go into settings again and click indexes. So these are the default default indexes that are already created. We're going to create a new index, and let's call this one Windows events. That's related to where the data will be coming from. And everything else for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to leave as it is. So click save. Okay, so we can't have any spaces, so just do an underscore, and we'll just have it all lowercase. A little bit easy to identify ones that you've created. And there we are. So we've got the Windows events created here now, and the current size is how you indicate if it's growing in size, then it's a good indication that it's getting data. At the moment, that's not going to change because we've not configured it to receive anything on and through that listening port. So for now, we've set up what we need to. And the Splunk configuration on this side is now done. So what we can do is head over to the Windows machine. So in this case, in our diagram, we're now heading over to this machine where the data is going to be sent from. So wherever you want to receive data from, that's the server that you need to be on now, because we're going to focus on the universal forwarder. In my case, it's going to be the Windows Active Directory machine. So that's the one I'm going to open up. And here it is. Now here we need internet access. And we can just go and search on Splunk free, and that'll probably be enough. You put in universal forwarder if you want, but we'll find it anyway. Right, once you're on this site here, so you've got the Splunk universal forwarder. Current version won't matter because it will update each time you probably come back to this. So we need to put your credentials in here, or sign up if it's the first time. If you've signed up before, you can log in. So do that and we'll go to the next stage. Right, now once you've entered your details, either logged in or signed up for free, then you'll come to the next stage, which is choose your download. Now, because I'm installing this on the Active Directory machine, that's a Windows machine. That particular one is a Windows Server 2019, so we need this MSI, which will cover us. As you can see, if you wanted to install it on the endpoints as well, they're 32-bit, then you've got a different installer there. So we can click download now. It will start downloading on the machine. We'll also have the option to do it via wget as well. So if I just show you that, that's the option there. What we'll try and do with PowerShell is see if we can run that wget. Okay, so as you can see, if we enter the wget command in, that will now download it straight from the Splunk website. So instead of using this option where you download it, will be downloaded anyway. So as you can see, if we click download, the file will be in there. But if for whatever reason you needed to, the wget, we can also use that in server environments where you might not have a GUI interface. So I'm going to go and download through the wget command line, and we'll just wait for that to download. Should just take a few moments, especially as this is an Active Directory server. I don't really want to be installing a new browser on there just for the sake of installing Splunk. So the safer route is to use wget instead. So we'll see how that goes. Right, so we'll have a look at this download now. Okay, so this is the directory that it'll be sitting in. So we want to go this PC, run the C drive. Want to go users and administrator, and then we'll see the Splunk folder downloaded here. So if we double click that, and we'll start the MSI file installation even. So we'll check this box to accept the license agreement, and we want to use this universal folder with an on-premise Splunk enterprise instance. So that is what is installed on my Splunk server here. So we'll carry on. Obviously, if you were cloud, then you'd click the other option, click next, and we'll put a username in. I'm just going to use the same for what I have on the Splunk instance, just keep it all the same, but you could have a different one for the universal folder should you need. Maybe more of a use case in a real enterprise environment, but not for our lab purpose. We'll add our own password, click next. Now, this is the deployment server. So this is where Splunk is installed. So if you recall going back to this instance here, so the universal folder that we're setting up now is asking where is Splunk installed, so it's here. So we need this IP address. Okay, so once we've entered our credentials, we're going to the next stage. Here, what we need to do is this server itself. So this server IP address, we're just going to find out. Go into command prompt. The IP address for this machine would be 172.16.0.1. But if you didn't know on your machine, so you'd be doing IP config, and it will tell you the IP address here under the relevant adapter. We'll do 116.0.1, and the default port will be left as it is, so 8089. Click next. Now the receiving indexer. So when we look back at our diagram here, we can see the receiving indexer we set up on the Splunk installation, which was here. So we need that IP address. So the 172.16.0.102. So that's what we need to put here. 172.16.0.102. And if you remember, we set up the listening port as 9997. So click next and then click install to begin the installation. Give that a few moments. So what we've done there is we've told it where to send data from and where to send data to, including the port number. Okay, if you wanted more information, you could go into the relevant tabs here. We're done for this particular part, so we'll click on finish and we'll minimize that and we'll go into our Splunk instance. So this is the server with Splunk on. So let's just log into that. Now, if we head over to the settings and we'll go over to our Windows events. Right, once you're on the server, we want to be on indexes, or it doesn't matter which page you land on, but go to settings and we want to click on add data. We should then get a few options of how we want to add or ingest the data. We'll skip the tour for now. And here you can see we can upload files through monitoring or forward. So we want to use data from a Splunk forwarder or the universal forwarder. So we set up the username, generate a password, or create your own password even. Deployment server I'm going to leave blank, but the receiving indexer needs to be the server where Splunk was installed. So this Splunk Enterprise, wherever that is installed, you need the IP address of that machine. In my case, this address here, 172.16.0.102. And then the port we opened was on 9997. Click next, click install to begin that. Okay, so that's finished. So click on finish. And we should see in Task Manager now, Splunk D process running. There we go, Splunk D service. And we'll just restart that service. Okay, so that's restarted. So let's leave that be. We'll head over to our Splunk server, refresh the screen here. And we'll just go to settings, add data. We'll go to data from Splunk folder. Right, so now we've got the universal forwarder on the Windows machine now. So once we double click the MSI, we'll go check this box and we'll click on next. Set ourselves a username. Now this can be different to your Splunk instance, so the universal forwarder can have a different username, but we're going to keep it the same. We'll do our own password and then click next when you're ready. Deployment server, so this will be the Linux machine where your Splunk instance is installed. So in our diagram here, it'll be this server here. So 172.16.0.102 and then default port 8089 and then receiving indexer the same. So 172.16.0.102 and that port, that was the listening port where we're going to send data. So 9997. Next and install. Right, so that's finished. So let's click on finish here and we'll head over to our Ubuntu server where Splunk is. Log in. Right, once we're here, we'll go to settings and we want to add data. Now there's three ways we can add data. We want to use the universal forwarder, so get data from a Splunk forwarder. Right, so what we want to do is we want to go to settings and then add data. And there's three options here. So we could upload some files, monitor from files and port. We want to forward, so data from a Splunk universal forwarder. Now if you followed everything correctly, we should see available hosts at Windows Server 2019 DC. That machine is this one here. Now if you don't see this and you've followed everything that I've put in, then don't panic. It needs, I would say, a good 5 minutes before this will come up. So if you go in there too quickly, the available hosts, this won't show. It will say there's nothing available. That's just because the data just hasn't had time to feed in and it won't find the available hosts. So once you can see it, we'll carry on. And now it's added here. And then server class name, we can just put domain controller, primary domain controller, and we can go next. Now we need to select the options that we want to monitor. For this particular video, I'm just going to select an arbitrary data set, but for yourself, you'd want to fine tune, put a bit more thought into what you want to monitor. Otherwise, the output is just going to be far too noisy. So if we scroll down, we can see all the different types of data that we can get. And we're going to go with local event logs. And in here, we get some sub menus. So we've got application, forwarded events, security, setup, system. In our case, we're just going to do all of them. So add all, and then we'll go to next. Now here it says where are they going to be indexed to. So we did set up one for this, and that was called Windows Events. So let's click that one and we'll click review. So here we can see server class name, primary domain controller. That's just more for our benefit. List of forwarders, so it's picked up that server 2019 DC. Collection name is going to be local host. Input type is going to be event logs. The sub menu, we selected everything, and the index it's going to go into, that name we've given it is Windows_events. So we'll submit that. So local event logs input has been created successfully. So we've got that confirmation. And now if we want to, we can start searching. So we'll skip the tour for now. And here there's no matching events. So what we can do is if we go to settings, we'll just check that things are being sent in. If we go to indexes, and this data here, so it's just at 1 megabit still, so nothing's been sent through. So let's go into our server and we'll just have a little look at things we can do. Let's start Internet Explorer. In the Windows server, let's just do a sign-in event. So what we'll do is we will log off and we'll sign back in again. See if that creates any events that we can send. Yeah, okay, so we do need to refresh the screen. It's not live stats. So now we can see that 1 megabyte increased to 6 megabytes. So we do have some data coming in now. To see that data, what we need to do is go to settings and indexes. Now if we go to search and reporting, we can just put in a search field. So we'll go to search and reporting. We can go to analyze data with table view. So let's create a table view. And then we've got the indexes that we can have a look at. So let's click the one that we selected earlier because that's where we've asked for all the data from this particular scenario to go to. And we've got all the event types there. Let's just specify security ones. So we'll go next. And these are the events now. So as you can see, there's 50 events that happened, and you've got all the details that you'd need for your analysis going forward. You can scroll down, and then there's some additional fields that you can search with, etc. We're not going to go into the details of that in this video, but this was just to get your universal forwarder set up ready so you can start the next part of this process. Hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching.